See you at Christmas.
With a smile, my husband waved goodbye and left for his overseas trip. The news of the accident came from my father-in-law. A bus had overturned in a mountainous area. Then, it had fallen off a cliff. I was told my beloved husband's body had been cremated locally. I wish I could have seen him one last time, just for a moment.
It couldn't be helped. Let it go.
All I had left were a few small mementos. This must be what they mean when they say it feels like a hole has opened in your heart. After that, I lost all will to live and spent my days without purpose. Every day, I sank deeper into my grief. I didn't even know why I was alive anymore. But one day, 3 years later, something unexpected happened. When I came home from work as usual, there was a figure standing right in front of me.
I'm home. I came to see you.
It was my husband, who was supposed to have passed away. I didn't care if it was a dream or an illusion. I clung to him and cried my heart out. The truth of the incident came from my husband's lips, and so did the lies of my father-in-law. To win our freedom, we decided to fight. My name is Amelia Sawyer. I'm 30 years old. I lost my parents in an accident when I was a child and grew up in an orphanage. I had no luck with relationships, no family, and lived a life of complete loneliness. For someone like me, meeting Tom was truly something special.
An orphanage. That must have been rough. The world isn't fair, you know? It's always the kind people who end up hurt.
We met by chance through work and started dating. We felt a connection right away, and soon we got married. We didn't have a wedding, just a photo shoot and a small celebration for the two of us. I truly believed that I could finally be happy. Tom told me his parents had divorced when he was a child. Raised in a single-parent household, Tom grew up to be a calm and kind person. Tom's mother had passed away after battling a serious illness 5 years ago.
Mom remarried 3 years before she died, so now my only real family is her second husband. Not that I'm happy about it.
Tom looked glum. Whenever he talked about his stepfather, he always seemed irritated. That's because his stepfather, Greg, had a downright terrible personality. Even though Greg was in his 50s, he had no steady job and spent his days drinking and gambling. Self-centered as always, Greg even set ridiculous conditions when we decided to get married.
Amelia, once you get married, you're gonna live in my house. Cooking and doing laundry are women's work, aren't they?
Come on, Dad, give me a break. Amelia and I have been planning to rent an apartment and live on our own. We've talked about this for ages.
Why should I care? Tom, are you trying to defy me, your father?
Greg had taken care of Tom's mother until her final moments. Because of that, kind and gentle Tom couldn't bring himself to stand up to him. With no other choice, I moved into Greg's house just as he demanded. Greg was a man completely lacking in morals. After his baths, Greg would wander around half naked, and he even used the bathroom with the door wide open. Even though I was there, a woman in the same house, he didn't care at all. When I complained, Greg would immediately fly into a rage. "You're just a wife," he'd yell.
This is my house, you hear me? Don't get all high and mighty when you're just the one who married into this family.
I'm sorry if I sounded disrespectful. I just wish you'd be a little more mindful of others.
Mindful of others? In my own house? Don't be stupid. You're just a wife. Don't you dare tell me what to do.
As I mentioned earlier, Greg didn't have a steady job. Sometimes his friend would throw him some work. What kind of work it was, I had no idea. Even Tom didn't seem to know the details. Greg was a man who couldn't get enough of drinking and gambling, so he was always broke. When he ran out of cash, he'd come begging to me with a sickeningly sweet tone in his voice.
Hey, Amelia, can you lend me another $100? Just this once.
What? I just lent you money the other day. Greg, this is the third time this month.
I always tell you I'll pay you back double, don't I? If I win, you'll benefit too, won't you?
Not once had I ever benefited. Greg's persistence wore me down completely. In the end, I always gave in and handed him the money. After indulging in his gambling, Greg would buy a ridiculous amount of alcohol. Without even attempting to repay me, he would get happily drunk on his beloved whiskey.
Hey, Amelia, stop standing around like an idiot and make me some snacks. Then come over here and pour me a drink. You drink too.
I'm fine, thank you. Besides, Tom isn't even home yet.
That's exactly why. Let's enjoy ourselves before that nuisance comes back, all right?
Please stop. I really mean it. Be friendly with Greg behind Tom's back? Not in a million years. The very idea made my skin crawl. But if he decided to use force, could I really resist him? To protect myself, I knew I had to document Greg's behavior. So I set up a small hidden camera in the room to keep an eye on him. If something happened, the camera footage would serve as evidence to protect me. It had been 6 months since I married Tom. I was starting to get used to living at his family's house. At the same time, Greg also seemed to have gotten used to my presence. His demands and behavior became even more shameless, and the emotional strain on me kept growing. Greg, please, I'm begging you. Put your clothes on as soon as you get out of the bath.
Yeah, Dad, think about how Amelia feels. She doesn't want to see some guy she barely knew walking around naked.
Amelia's not interested in my body. She can look all she wants, front or back.
I'm not interested. Please, just stop. Greg grinned stupidly, shamelessly flaunting his scrawny body. His harassment and pranks escalated after that. He'd demand that I help him put on his underwear or wipe his backside. Greg, riding high on his sense of power, said whatever he pleased. No matter what Tom said to him, he completely ignored it. I couldn't stand how hard every day was.
I'm going to quit my job.
One day, Tom told me that out of the blue. Since I also worked, it wasn't like we'd be completely stuck financially. Really? Why is that? When I asked, Tom glanced quickly in Greg's direction.
Apparently, Dad's work is getting busy. I need to help him out.
You're quitting your current job just to help him? Will your pay go up or down? Where will you be working and what kind of job is it?
I don't know if my pay will go up. From what I hear, it depends on the results, so there's a big chance it could swing either way. As for where and what kind of job it is, I wish I could tell you, but apparently I'm not allowed to share it. Not even with family.
In the end, I didn't learn anything. All I could do was trust Tom and let him go. To make matters worse, Tom would be gone for several months. Was it like working away from home? I felt so helpless and lonely. What about you, Greg? Aren't you going with Tom? Or maybe you could go instead of him.
It's better if the younger guy does it. What's wrong? Are you saying you don't want to live here alone with me while Tom's gone?
That's not what I meant. Of course, I hated the idea, but there was no way I could say that out loud. Still, what kind of work were Greg and Tom even doing? I tried every trick in the book to get answers, but I couldn't figure out a thing. Neither of them would give me an answer. If anyone would spill the truth after a few drinks, it should have been Greg.
Don't ask. You don't need to know. Knowing won't change a thing.
And with that, he shut his mouth. If the job was dangerous, I wanted them to stop immediately. I even asked Tom secretly to quit, but he just smiled sadly and shook his head.
Dad says Mom's treatments cost a lot of money and there's still debt left over. That's why I have to help pay it off. Helping with this work is part of that.
I didn't know whether that was true or not. I had no way to confirm it. Maybe Tom felt the same way, unsure but powerless to stop. Before long, Greg started being away from home more often, and I found myself spending most of my time alone. Then, one day, a man with a stoic expression, dressed in an expensive suit, casually showed up at our house. He introduced himself as Michael Shane, Greg's boss. Michael exuded an ominous and dangerous aura. I instinctively knew he definitely wasn't part of a legitimate profession. Greg's reaction when he noticed Michael confirmed my suspicion.
Boss. Michael. What brings you here?
How many times have I told you not to call me boss?
Sorry, Michael.
I'm here to discuss your son's next assignment.
I was shut out of the room. Michael even told me there was no need to serve tea or anything. A few minutes later, Michael poked his head out of the room and called me in. When I went to listen, he informed me that Tom would be working overseas.
He'll be spending about half the year abroad. I know you'll miss him, but bear with it, all right?
I thought it was the worst. It was hard enough to be separated within the country, but I never imagined that in our first year of marriage, I'd have to live with my husband across an ocean. Tom was deeply upset as well. He had no choice in the matter and was told he simply had to comply. The destination was the Philippines. Apparently, they needed young men for the job, so only Tom was going. Greg and I stayed behind in the country, once again left to live together for the foreseeable future. On the day of Tom's departure, we hugged and cried at the airport. I couldn't shake the feeling that this might be a goodbye forever. For some reason, that thought wouldn't leave my mind. And so began my life with Greg. I tried to spend as little time around him as possible. Of course, it was to protect my dignity. I couldn't let anything inappropriate happen under any circumstances. I avoided taking a bath until Greg went to bed, and I completely refused to join him for drinks in the evening. Even with the security camera in place, I couldn't let my guard down. I lived cautiously every day. One day, Greg seemed to realize that I was actively avoiding him. Drunk and angry, he shouted at me.
Don't get too full of yourself. Do you really think a grouchy woman like you could ever get me turned on? Talk about being delusional.
You can say whatever you like. Just leave your glasses in the sink after you're done drinking. I'll wash them when I get back.
Hey, where do you think you're going this late at night? You're my daughter-in-law, and you can't even pour me a drink.
My relationship with Greg just kept getting worse. At times like these, I would pass the time at an internet cafe or somewhere similar. If only Tom were here with me. I can't count how many times I thought that. All I could do was endure the daily hardships while counting down the days until Tom's return. Years after Tom had gone to work overseas, he came back for a short visit. I met him at the airport, and we finally got to spend some precious time together as a couple. As always, Tom said he couldn't talk about the details of his work. But that didn't matter to me. I was just happy to be with him. I'm sure he felt the same way. The day of his departure came again. Just like last time, we hugged tightly at the airport before saying goodbye.
See you at Christmas.
Tom waved at me with a smile. I wiped away my tears and waved back. Little did I know the fate that awaited us just a few days later. One day, Greg came home with a somber expression. He was usually so carefree and casual. What could have happened? Did you eat something bad? When I asked, Greg slowly shook his head.
Tom, he was caught in an accident in the Philippines.
What? Is Tom okay? Greg shook his head again. His expression showed how difficult it was for him to share the news. Tom had apparently been in a car accident in the mountains.
The bus Tom was on fell off a cliff. They've already cremated his body over there.
No. I wanted to go to the Philippines. But I had no idea where to even begin looking once I got there. When I asked Greg for help, he refused to tell me anything and said I should give up.
I'll handle the paperwork with the authorities. Don't even think about going over there. Got it?
What did he mean by over there? The Philippines? Or the afterlife, where Tom might be? I was overwhelmed by reality and spent every night crying. I wanted to learn as much as I could about Tom, but I couldn't get any information about the accident. Even when I checked international news, there was no mention of a bus accident in the Philippines. Tom's ashes still hadn't been sent back to me either. I gradually lost the will to live. Day after day, I sank deeper into grief. Why was I even alive? As I kept asking myself that question, 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Then one day, I was trudging home from work as usual. To my surprise, someone unexpected was standing in front of my house. It was Tom, who was supposed to have passed away.
I'm home. I came to see you.
Tom. I didn't care if it was a dream or an illusion. I clung to Tom and cried. I could feel him. He was alive, without a doubt. How? What's going on? I was told you died in a bus accident, that you were cremated in the Philippines.
That was something Dad told you, right? Don't worry, I'm alive. I'm so sorry I couldn't contact you until now. I've been waiting for a chance to escape.
A chance to escape? From who?
Dad's associates.
It seemed Greg had told some elaborate lies. He and a few of his associates had coordinated their stories to deceive the organization. If the truth comes out, Greg won't get off easy, Tom explained. Wait a minute. What organization? Were you part of it too?
Part of it might not be the right phrase. It was more like I was caught, forced to work for them, and deceived by Dad's smooth talk.
Greg was a member of an organized crime group. Tom had been trapped and forced to work for them. He was given a room and had to share living space with a few others in the same situation.
They made us do forced labor with the locals. We earned money, which was then handed over to the organization. But then, Dad and his associates deceived the group.
Deceived? You mean they betrayed them?
Exactly. They faked the accident and took some of us workers away to a different location to do other work. Thanks to someone's help, I managed to escape and return home. The rest of Dad's associates, except for him, were caught by the organization.
It was a story too incredible to believe. But since it was coming from Tom himself, I had no choice but to trust it. Apparently, Greg didn't yet know that his betrayal had been exposed. Tom had come back to cut ties with the organization and sever all connections with Greg. As I struggled to process everything he had told me, Tom held me tightly again.
Let's end everything today, and let's start over somewhere far away from Dad.
Yeah, let's do that. I've always wanted to. I've always wished we could start fresh, leave everything behind. Nothing was over yet. I knew that, but tears still filled my eyes. I had thought I'd never see Tom again. Just having him back was enough to make me happy. At that moment, I felt like nothing could scare me. A few hours after reuniting with Tom, Greg came home as usual. His face was red. It seemed Greg had been out drinking. He stared at his phone screen, muttering something under his breath. Is something wrong?
Oh, well, not really. I just haven't been able to get in touch with my associates since yesterday.
Associates. From work?
Yeah, something like that. By the way, has anyone come by? Anyone looking for me?
Not that I know of. I replied nonchalantly, playing dumb. Greg gave me a suspicious look. He must have noticed my unusually good mood. I couldn't fully hide the joy of reuniting with Tom.
Something's off. Are you hiding something from me?
Shouldn't I be asking you that? Are you hiding something from me, Greg?
What? No, I'm not hiding anything.
Oh, I see. Well, it doesn't matter. By the way, I'll be moving out of this house soon. Greg's eyes widened in shock. His face clearly showed he hadn't expected me to say that. It was obvious he was stunned.
Why are you saying this now? This house is filled with memories of Tom, isn't it? Even when you couldn't see him, you didn't file for divorce because you still had feelings for him, right?
I'm just fed up with living with you, Greg. Wandering around naked after your bath, using the bathroom with the door open. I can't live with someone so disrespectful.
I've told you before, haven't I? This is my house. I can do whatever I want in my own home.
So you don't care about how your housemates feel. That's exactly why I need to leave this house. I can't stay with someone like you. Greg tilted his head, looking puzzled. He clearly thought something was off. To be honest, I was starting to find it hard to keep the truth hidden any longer. The joy of reuniting with Tom surged up from deep within my chest.
Spit it out. What are you hiding? You're keeping something from me, aren't you? Am I right?
Why don't you start, Greg? There's something you're hiding from me, isn't there? If you spill everything right here and now, I'll tell you everything I know too.
This is pointless. I've had enough of this. Don't get cocky just because you're my daughter-in-law.
It seemed the blood had rushed to his head. Greg lunged at me. Of course, I had anticipated this. Tom, who had been hiding, stepped out and stood between Greg and me.
Tom, you're back. Then why didn't I get any word from you?
Why don't you try reaching out? Call your buddies. I doubt anyone will answer, though.
Don't tell me. They found out.
Tom's silence was all the answer Greg needed. His face turned pale in an instant. He realized he was now a target of the organization he had betrayed. Greg seemed to have realized this belatedly, and it clearly terrified him. The organization Greg was part of, and the one Tom had been involved with, was, to put it bluntly, the mafia. The crime of deceiving the organization and causing them losses was severe. Greg would likely face harsh punishment.
This is the worst. When and how did they find out?
Someone claiming to be connected to the group personally came all the way here to find out. They said they couldn't track down any information about the bus accident, so they decided to confirm it themselves.
That was over 3 years ago.
They only recently came across the information about the accident. Apparently, they've been very busy.
Greg muttered to himself, clearly deep in thought. He was probably trying to figure out how to escape from the group. You won't be getting away, Tom interrupted Greg's thoughts.
They told me not to let you escape. Sorry, but you're going to have to stay put.
Please, Tom, let me go.
I can't do that. I'm furious with you too. You deceived me into forced labor. You made Amelia miserable while she lived with you. You need to take responsibility and face the consequences.
Tom knew I had been recording everything inside the house. He was fully aware of how much Greg had made my life miserable. Although he didn't show it outwardly, Tom was clearly furious. It's only natural, considering he had been deceived and forced into labor for years.
I deceived you into forced labor. When did I ever do something like that?
You lied about Mom being in debt, didn't you? I believed that story and thought I had to help pay it off. That's why I took on all those grueling jobs.
Greg told Tom such a lie?
I worked, and he skimmed off the top. That's how he's been living the easy life all this time.
Tom said coldly, his disdain evident in his icy glare. Greg didn't even bother denying it, which meant it had to be true. He had exploited Tom's pure-hearted nature for his own gain. Now Greg was completely flustered. He seemed to be desperately looking for an escape route. Of course, neither Tom nor I had any intention of letting him get away.
What you were doing was a crime, Dad. You had us grow plants that are illegal in the US and export them. Isn't that right?
I don't know anything. I swear I don't know anything.
Maybe you didn't get directly involved in the operations, but you must have heard about it. You had to know where your associates were and what they were doing. Otherwise, how could you assign people to those locations?
So, Greg's role within the group was securing workers, wasn't it? It seemed I was right. Greg's face twisted as if I had hit a nerve. Tom had thoroughly investigated the details of Greg and his associates' criminal activities. Realizing that everything had been uncovered, Greg appeared deeply shaken. It was likely that many others, like Tom, had been tricked and forced into labor. Even if it was only for a few years, those workers had precious time stolen from their lives, and their anger must have been immense.
I'm going to the police and tell them everything. Where you and your associates were operating in the Philippines, what you were doing there, and the routes and methods you used to smuggle the goods into the U.S.
Stop it. I won't allow this.
Do you really think you're in a position to give orders? You'd better think before you speak.
It was the first time I'd ever heard Tom yell. Perhaps it was the same for Greg. His previously domineering attitude vanished in an instant. Tom was much younger and taller. He had also become more muscular than he was 3 years ago. It was likely the result of the harsh labor he had endured. Greg must have realized he couldn't win in a physical confrontation.
Fine, I get it. Calm down, Tom. I'll go to the police myself. Will that satisfy you? I'll turn myself in and confess everything.
Sorry, but I don't trust you at all. You'll just end up running away somewhere.
Please, believe me. I really regret everything. Lying to you to get you to the Philippines, piling lies on top of lies, and forcing you into 3 years of hard labor. I'm sorry for all of it. I regret it all.
Even to my ears, Greg's apology sounded insincere. He's trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation and run away somewhere. That's just my intuition, but it felt like that's what Greg was thinking. Tom seemed to suspect the same, as the doubt in his eyes as he looked at Greg was unmistakable.
I get that you feel bad about what you did to me, but what about the organization? How do you feel about them?
What? The organization? Why do you care about that?
Just answer the question. You deceived the organization, stole us as a labor force, and used us for your personal gain, reaping profits for 3 years. Right? You betrayed them. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel kinda bad about it. But honestly, I think it's their fault for getting tricked. I'm actually proud of how well we pulled it off.
Greg let out a sly laugh. It seemed those words reflected his true feelings. He had deceived the criminal organization he was a part of and profited from it. Greg felt no small amount of pride in that. It seemed someone found his statement intolerable. The person who had been hiding all along finally revealed themselves. A man in a suit entered the room without a sound. Seeing the stern look on his face, Greg turned pale. His eyes seemed to ask, "Why are you here?" It was Michael Shane, the man who had claimed to be Greg's boss 3 years ago.
Boss. Michael.
How many times have I told you not to call me that?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to betray the organization.
Didn't mean to betray us? You lied to the organization, kidnapped people, and forced them to work. And you still say you didn't mean to betray us?
Under Michael's intimidating glare, Greg shrank back. Michael had been the first to realize Greg and his associates' lies. It seemed he was as sharp as he looked. He had noticed something suspicious about the reported bus accident and secretly started investigating.
The Philippines wasn't my assigned region. That's why it took me 3 years to uncover your lies. You've got some nerve pulling a stunt like that.
I'm really sorry. I'll turn over all the money I earned to the organization. So please, forgive me.
You think that's enough? No way. You idiots set a terrible precedent. What if others start thinking they can pull the same trick, cheat the organization, and get away with it? What then?
Under Michael's furious tirade, Greg was completely cowed. The arrogant demeanor he usually showed around me was nowhere to be seen. If he was this scared, he should never have betrayed the organization in the first place. Was money so important to him that he was willing to take such a dangerous risk? I couldn't understand it. Michael, still glaring, suddenly turned to Tom.
Tom, sorry to ask, but can you leave him to me? There are things that can't go public, so handing him over to the cops isn't an option.
Oh, sure. I don't mind either way.
Thanks. I know how much this guy made you suffer for years. Trust me, I'll make him wish he'd been arrested instead. Hey Greg, better brace yourself.
Please have mercy.
Greg's tears were genuine. The pitiful look on his face as he glanced up at Michael was almost unbearable to watch.
Michael, please, I'm begging you. Just this once, let me go.
Give it up. Most of this has already been reported to the upper management. Even if I let you go, someone else will catch you eventually.
Greg began sobbing uncontrollably. Even though he was the one who broke the rules, he was now crying out of fear of punishment. I truly couldn't understand this man.
Please, I'm begging you. Take half the profits, or take it all. I'll give every penny to you, Michael.
Are you trying to bribe me? You really think I'm that cheap? Is that it?
No, I'm sorry.
It was clear that Michael wasn't the type of person who could be swayed by money. In fact, Greg's attempt had only made things worse. Realizing his mistake, Greg started trembling. Seeing Greg like that, Michael clicked his tongue in frustration. His eyes were filled with unmistakable contempt.
Tell me, what the hell were you planning to do with all that money you made by screwing over the organization?
Well, there was some debt left behind by my late wife.
Don't lie. Mom never had any debt to begin with. I already know the truth.
I believe the reason you always want so much money, Greg, is for gambling and drinking. I've seen it firsthand for years, so I know it well. Isn't that right, Greg? Greg glared at me with a look that seemed to say, "Don't say unnecessary things." But it was already too late. Michael let out a deep sigh.
So you betrayed the organization for personal gain, huh? Just admit it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You idiot.
Michael pulled out his phone and made a call. A few minutes later, several cars arrived in front of the house. The men who stepped out were all dressed in suits. Every single one of them had an intimidating look. Under Michael's instructions, they forced a crying Greg into one of the cars. It was clear he was being taken to the organization's headquarters for further interrogation. "Help me! Forgive me!" Greg shouted toward us. It was a pathetic end for him. Reports later said Greg faced severe punishment at the headquarters. As Michael had promised, it was bad enough that Greg might have wished he'd just gone to the police. I don't know, nor do I care to know, what kind of punishment the mafia inflicts on their own. However, it seems his life was spared. Michael relayed that information to Tom.
Want to know where he is now? India. Seems like he's working somewhat seriously over there.
India? So, is he doing tough labor there like I was in the Philippines?
Yeah, something like that, but way worse conditions.
Worse conditions? Like what?
Greg was reportedly working as a sewer cleaner. He had to crawl into the sewers to clear out garbage. The sewer pipes are filled with toxic gases and teeming with harmful bacteria. It's a grueling job where many lose their lives, and few are willing to do it voluntarily. Though it's a form of punishment and unavoidable, it's undeniably a harsh role to be assigned.
For all the sneaky profits he made behind the organization's back, he'll have to work hard to pay it all back. Though he might get sick and be unable to work before he even comes close to repaying it all.
How much did he pocket?
Who knows? Probably at least $50,000. It'll take him decades to earn that back doing sewer work in India.
In neighboring Pakistan, people doing similar work reportedly earn around 25,000 rupees a month. That's a little over $400 in US currency. Even if Greg devoted every cent to repayment, it would take over a decade to clear his debt. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably lose the will to live. Greg, working in a sewage pipe filled with filth, submerged up to his neck in murky, black water. Even with a mask, the stench must be unbearable. I could almost hear his sobs echoing in the sewer as he worked. Many cleaners reportedly pass out from the gases or suffer from severe eye irritation. Will Greg ever return to America? Honestly, I don't care. As for me, I'm living a happy life with Tom now. The house where I endured so many bad memories was sold, thanks to Tom. We rented a new apartment and started fresh. The change in environment seemed to have been just what we needed. We finally welcomed our long-awaited baby.
Incredible. We couldn't conceive back at the old house, but the moment we moved, it happened.
It's strange how things work, isn't it? A good home really makes a difference.
Amelia, here's to us. Let's keep working hard together.
The test results revealed that the baby is a boy. I want to raise this child to be sincere and compassionate. I'm determined to raise my son to be kind and trustworthy, just like Tom. And I'll make sure he doesn't grow up to be anything like Greg. Things may not always go as planned, but no matter how tough it gets, I know I can endure it. Because I'm not alone. I have my loving partner by my side.